Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Kat Fleece from Central New Mexico Community College. Here we start a new series of videos, about 4 of them, on the lymphatic system. Let's start by taking a look at the functions of our lymphatic system. So the lymph in our lymphatic system is going to help remove pathogens from our blood, and we're going to see which cells and which organs are involved in this especially. But in addition to this, our lymphatic system and the lymph of the lymphatic system plays a very important role in maintaining a constant volume of blood. Recall when we learned about bulk fluid flow in our capillaries, where at the arterial end, the pressure of our blood was higher than at the venial end. So at the arterial end, we had the blood filter to create interstitial fluid, while at the venial end, we had reabsorption occurring, and most of that interstitial fluid returned to the blood, but not all of it. And so a few liters, about 3 liters, would stay behind in the form of interstitial fluid, which would then seep into the lymphatic capillaries of our lymphatic system. Eventually, this lymph in these lymphatic capillaries, that 3 liters of lymph in the lymphatic system, does get returned to our venous system, more specifically the left and the right subclavian veins. And in that way, we see how the lymph is formed by the fact that some of our plasma leaks out of our capillary beds, but eventually that lymph is returned to the venous blood. And in that way, we really never lose any significant amounts of our blood volume. So if we compare blood with plasma, interstitial fluid, and lymph, clearly the big difference between blood and plasma is that the plasma is the matrix of our blood, the extracellular material. So it's everything except for the formed elements, except for the red blood cells and the platelets and the white blood cells. The difference then between plasma and interstitial fluid and lymph is not much. The one thing that we will find in interstitial fluid and in lymph that we do not find in plasma is the presence of white blood cells. So when we see that lymph is formed, well, first interstitial fluid is formed, which then is picked up by the lymphatic system, and then we call the fluid lymph. During that time, we're going to see that also some white blood cells are going to be entering into that interstitial fluid and lymph. There are also going to be less proteins in the interstitial fluid and lymph compared to the plasma, but proteins will still be present. So pretty much whatever we find in plasma, whether it's proteins, lipids, hormones, vitamins, and also depending on what the cells are doing at that time, we're going to see whatever's in the plasma also in the interstitial fluid, and the composition of the interstitial fluid is pretty much the same as that of the lymph. The way lymph is transported in the lymphatic system is slightly different from how blood is transported in the cardiovascular system. Let's first take a look again at our blood. So in the case of our cardiovascular system, we have our pumping mechanism, the heart, and the heart pumps the blood under high pressure into the arterial system, which eventually then becomes part of a capillary system, which then eventually returns in the form of venous blood back to the pump. So it's a very circular path that our blood flow follows. It's not quite that way in the case of lymph. First of all, we do not have any kind of a pump. So the pressure in the vessels of our lymphatic system is quite low. And for that reason, they're very similar to the veins or the venous system of our blood. And remember what our veins have to depend on in order to get the blood back to the heart. Even our veins depend on a muscular pump and our respiratory pump mechanism. And to some extent, our lymphatic vessels can depend on that as well. But also, we see that lymphatic vessels are going to depend a lot on the pulsations of um, the blood in nearby arteries and even the smooth muscle contractions that are occurring in the walls of the lymphatic vessels. So, aside from not having a pump mechanism like the blood has the heart, our lymphatic system also is a one-way system rather than a circular system. So we're going to see that lymph is produced at the level of the capillary beds, and then it is going to follow the various lymph vessels back to the venous system nearby the heart, more specifically the left and the right subclavian veins. So it starts here and it ends there. So there are it has polarity, you could argue. On the other hand, our blood, it starts at the heart and it returns to the heart. So it's a circular pattern there. The parts of the lymphatic system include all kinds of vessels, big vessels, all the way to lymphatic capillaries. And the lymphatic capillaries are very much intertwined with the blood capillaries. In addition to a lymphatic vessel system that we'll take a closer look at next, we have what we call lymphoid tissues with rather specialized cells. And then also organs that we can call lymphoid organs or lymphatic organs, for instance, such as the various tonsils. We also have lymph nodes. Let's not forget the thymus, the spleen, which sits tucked in just underneath our ribs in that left hypochondriac region. We also have lymph nodes, of course, in various locations. And let's not forget the red bone marrow, and it might be good for us to add to this red bone marrow to distinguish it from yellow bone marrow.